Welcome, everybody, to Ghost Boy's Top 10 Best Halloween Horror Movies, Part 7. I'm here to indulge in your Halloween obsession, with 10 more movies filled with tension and possession. These movies are scary as hell, so pray for heaven. Now it's time to start our Hallows Eve session. The Pumpkin Man. A small town's urban legend comes to life when Catherine and her friends unintentionally summon a horrifying Halloween demon known as the Pumpkin Man. This is a low-budget creature feature, and a full-length movie adaptation of various short films made by the same people. I was very interested in this movie after seeing one of the short films titled The Pumpkin Man, Demon of Fall. It's kinda ridiculous to me that we don't have many Halloween-themed horror movies where the villain either has a pumpkin for a head or wears a pumpkin mask. The only two that I can think of off the top of my head is Trick from 2019 and, of course, Trick or Treat. And I gotta say, the Pumpkin Man is a pretty badass character. He's super tall and has giant skinny hands that look like they're made of vines. He wears a dark trench coat, and of course, the jack-o'-lantern head is very creepy. His eyes are very bright white, almost like they're glowing, and it's very unsettling. And the carvings of his jack-o'-lantern head look very vicious and savagely carved. And as far as I'm aware, this movie uses all practical effects and no CGI, and everything looks really impressive. We get a couple violent kills in this movie, and they were very well done. This film honestly reminded me of Hocus Pocus a little bit, except there are some bloody kills and vulgar language. But overall, it does feel more like a light-hearted horror movie for teenagers or young adults just starting to get into horror movies. But the best part about this movie, besides the Pumpkin Man himself, is the beautiful cinematography and incredible autumn scenery and Halloween atmosphere. This is literally one of the most visually Halloween-y, Halloween-themed movies I've ever seen. There's crisp orange leaves, haunted fun houses, pumpkin patches, and lots of Halloween decorations. And literally the most pumpkins I've ever seen in any movie ever. There's pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns in every single scene. And even when there's not actual pumpkins, there's still pumpkin pillows or decorations or someone wearing a sweater with a jack-o'-lantern on it. The main character in this movie even has a poster on her wall of The Witching Season, which is one of my favorite Halloween-themed horror anthologies. Every room and house and building and location in this movie is just absolutely covered in Halloween decorations and gorgeous autumn decor. This is one film that will definitely get you into the Halloween spirit. My only complaint is that since this movie is pretty low budget, the acting is somewhat cheesy sometimes, and it can seem a little silly as well. But I did really love the main character. She's very silly, quirky, cute, funny, adorable, and smart. Most final girls all seem to have a very common set of characteristics, so we never really get a very hyperactive final girl. So I appreciated that this movie tried something different. I will admit I wasn't expecting the ending of this movie to go in the direction that it did, and I was kinda sad about that, but it didn't ruin the movie or anything, and I still loved everything else. This is a well-made, low-budget creature feature, with a badass monster and incredible Halloween fall atmosphere. So if you're looking for a festive, frightful creature feature to watch once the witching season has began, then I recommend watching The Pumpkin Man. The Scare House. 2 years after a tragic accident, 6 college girls are invited to a party inside an elaborate Halloween funhouse. But once inside, the girls realize their host's intentions are not all fun and games. This movie is literally like Saw mixed with Scream and a little bit of Black Xmas. Like imagine if Billy and Stu or Billy and Jill created a jigsaw trap and invited all the girls from Black Xmas. This movie is about revenge, and I don't want to give away too much of the film or spoil anything, because this movie has a great unraveling of a mystery. It goes back and forth between the past and the present. We don't really know why the characters are doing what they are doing, but every time we get another flashback, we get another piece of the puzzle, and slowly start understanding what's happening and why it's happening. And I personally think the killers had a really good and understandable motive for why they're doing what they're doing. I don't think we get enough slasher movies with female characters as the killers. And so I really appreciated that the killers in this were strong, badass, and violent as fuck. The kills in this movie are insanely bloody, creative, and gruesome. Another thing I really enjoyed about this movie was the awesome set design and location. The funhouse is very dark, dim, uninviting, and spooky. And the ending of this film had a jaw-dropping twist that left me extremely shocked. So overall, this movie isn't super Halloween-y, but it does take place on the night before Halloween, aka Devil's Night. And the setting of the Halloween funhouse has tons of spooky vibes. I absolutely loved this movie, and I can definitely vouch that you will not regret watching The Scare House. Natty Knox. A small-town babysitter and the children she's looking after struggle to survive a serial killer on Halloween night. So I'd like to point out that the plot synopsis of this movie makes it sound like a knockoff of John Carpenter's Halloween, but it's really nothing like any of the films in the Halloween franchise. This movie is about a small town with an urban legend about this witch named Natty Knox. And it's kinda unclear if there's anything paranormal happening or not. But there's a serial killer and some of the teenagers in town accidentally see something they shouldn't have, and now the killer is coming after all of them. This movie is made by Dwight H. Little, who is the mastermind who directed Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. And this film has an all-star cast, including Scream Queen Danielle Harris, the man of your nightmares, Robert Englund, and the crazy cannibal himself, Bill Moseley. And all of those actors are definitely the best part about this movie. I was super excited to see another Halloween-themed horror movie starring Danielle Harris from the same guy who directed Halloween 4. It's like the best reunion ever. And funny enough, this is the 7th Halloween-themed horror movie starring Danielle Harris. There's Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, Rob Zombie's Halloween and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, Hallows Eve, Devil's Night, and now, Natty Knox. And I'm not gonna pretend like this is the greatest movie ever. I will admit I was a little disappointed when I first saw it, because I was really hopeful we would get another masterpiece like Halloween 4, but I think I just had my expectations way too high. That being said though, I still enjoyed this film. I was surprised by how likable the characters were. And all of the actors do a really great job. And I'm not just talking about the 3 horror legends. There's actually a pretty young girl in this movie, and I was blown away by how talented she was. This is a fun, entertaining B-movie slasher with a great cast and some beautiful fall Halloween scenery. So this Hallows Eve, bolt up your windows and check all the locks, then sit back and watch Natty Knox. Volumes of Blood. A sociology student and his friends gather at a library on Halloween to create an urban legend, unaware that they themselves might soon become one. So this is another Halloween-themed anthology. This one has 4 different stories, and each story takes place at the same library. The first story is called A Little Pick-Me-Up. This one is about a girl struggling to stay awake while studying for a test. She gets offered an energy drink by a mysterious salesman, but the energy drink has some deadly side effects. The second story is called Ghastly, and it's about a nervous librarian cataloging and organizing various books while being stalked and followed by a ghostly entity. The third story is called 13 After Midnight, and it's about a paranoid woman frantically trying to write an essay, but she mysteriously loses consciousness and awakens to find a hideously horrifying creature chasing her. And the fourth and final story is called The Encyclopedia Satanica. It's about a woman working late on Halloween night. She finds a book that allows her to speak to the dead, and she uses it to summon her recently deceased ex-boyfriend, but he has unfinished business. This is a really low-budget film, but it's very well executed. And I know when you hear that the entirety of the movie takes place in a library, you probably think that sounds really boring, but I actually really loved the setting and location in this movie. I can't think of any other horror movies that take place entirely in a library. And each story does a very great job at standing out and distinguishing itself from the others. The first story is a little bit silly, but it's a very unique body horror story. The second story is a black and white silent film ghost story. The third story is a creature feature, and it uses a lot of bright blue and pink neon lights. And the fourth story is a supernatural, almost gothic horror film with incredible Halloween atmosphere and very eerie ambiance. I also really liked the designs of the two masks in this movie. Both of them are on the poster, and I thought they were really creepy and very memorable. This is a very creative, indie Halloween anthology that often gets misjudged, but I really enjoyed it, so I definitely recommend checking out Volumes of Blood. Autumn Road. 10 years after a young girl goes missing on Halloween night, her sister returns to their hometown looking for answers, but along the way, she becomes entangled with two mysterious identical twin brothers who run the town's roadside haunted attraction. It's hard to describe what subgenre of horror this movie is, but I'd say it's kinda like a drama mystery with a couple kills throughout the film. But it's not a lot of kills, so it's definitely not a slasher. This is another guilty pleasure movie for me, because for the first 10 minutes or so, I was loving this movie, and very intrigued by the mystery. But we really don't get many answers or reasons as to what exactly happened and why. But this movie does have some great cinematography and Halloween atmosphere. Trick-or-treaters, haunted funhouses, orange leaves, costumes. Even the opening credit sequence is very cute and Halloweeny, with jack-o'-lanterns, ghosts, skeletons, and witches. Also, I really enjoyed the owl mask in this film. I thought it was very unique and original, and I really liked the symbolism behind it. I think this film would be best described as a slow-paced, mysterious, ambiguous character study. So if you're looking for a movie to watch when the leaves turn orange and the weather gets cold, then I recommend watching Autumn Road. Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers. After being in a coma for a year, Michael awakens and stalks his way back to Haddonfield, intent on killing his niece Jamie, who has been confined to a mental institution since Michael's last attempt to murder her. Suspecting a psychic link between Michael and Jamie, Dr. Samuel Loomis joins forces with the local sheriff and attempts to stop Michael's latest rampage. Wow, that is a very long movie description. But anyways, I truly do not understand why this movie gets so much hate. It's personally in my top 5 favorite films in the Halloween franchise. Jamie Lloyd is my #1 favorite final girl in the entire Halloween franchise. And for some reason, whenever I say that, people seem to get super defensive and upset and start an argument claiming that Jamie isn't a final girl. And I'm always like, why not? She's the main character in the movie, and she's literally the final girl left alive. I guess maybe since she's a child still, people refuse to accept the fact that she's a final girl, but I don't care what other people think. Jamie Lloyd is a badass final girl, and she's honestly way more brave and smart and courageous than any of the other girls in the series, including Laurie. And another character in this movie everyone seems to hate, but I personally love, is Tina. I know she acts a little hyper and silly sometimes, but so did Laurie's friends in the original Halloween, and nobody ever seems to complain about that. I'd also like to point out that Tina in this movie seems to care more about Jamie than Rachel ever did. Like, Jamie's sister Rachel spent the entire 4th movie bitching about not being able to hook up with her boyfriend and complaining about having to watch over Jamie. And then on the 1-year anniversary of her sister being hunted and almost murdered by Michael, Rachel decides to go on a trip out of town for the weekend? I think that's ridiculous. But Tina is constantly visiting Jamie in the hospital and always looking out for her. Tina is a hilarious, cool, beautiful, badass person, and a great friend to Jamie. She doesn't deserve all the hate she gets. Also, I actually really loved the whole mysterious introduction of the Man in Black and the thorn symbol as well. But now that I'm done defending the characters, I can talk about the fun stuff. The kills in this movie are some of my absolute favorite kills in the franchise. I absolutely love seeing Michael using a pitchfork and a scythe to murder people. That whole scene in the barn is incredible. Also, this movie has some fantastic Halloween atmosphere and scenery. The whole opening credit sequence with the pumpkin carving, the Halloween parties the girls go to, everyone wearing costumes, the whole barn, farmstead aesthetic, and plus, there's tons of pumpkins and orange lighting throughout the whole movie. And I absolutely love the scene where Jamie calls Michael uncle, and he actually takes off his mask. That's probably the most emotional scene in the whole franchise. This is an underrated, overhated Halloween slasher. Michael goes on a massacre and leaves no survivors. I highly recommend watching Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Project Eerie. Two teenagers stumble upon a mysterious DVD at an abandoned government facility on Halloween night. This movie is very similar to the VHS films. It's an anthology with 3 different stories, including aliens, ghosts, and serial killers. The first story is about a father and daughter who go on a camping trip, but when they arrive at the campground, they are suspiciously the only ones there, except for a strange and mysterious park ranger. The second story is about 2 hillbilly hunter friends trying to hunt down a wanted man who allegedly murdered his wife and child. And the third and final story is about 2 paranormal investigators who get hired by an Amish couple who claim their house is being haunted. I know all 3 stories probably sound pretty simple and standard just by the descriptions, but each story has a really big twist, and nothing is ever as it seems to be. Sadly, none of these 3 stories are necessarily Halloween themed, but I found them all to be really interesting and unique. Although my favorite part about this movie is definitely the wraparound story. I love any kind of story that has to do with government cover-ups or conspiracy theories. And I really love the idea of breaking into an abandoned government building and seeing things you aren't supposed to see. I just think that's a really cool concept. So if you want to watch a Halloween anthology about government cover-ups and conspiracy theories, then I recommend watching Project Eerie. Curse of Crom, The Legend of Halloween. A group of teenagers accidentally unleash an ancient Irish entity on their hometown, and now must stop it before midnight on Halloween. So I didn't really know anything about this movie, but the awesome artwork caught my eye, so I decided to give it a try, and I was very pleasantly surprised with this film. It's very similar to something like Goosebumps or a Disney Channel original movie like Hocus Pocus. A young woman is delivering food to people to save up money for college, and one night she does something she probably shouldn't have, and now this ghoulish phantom is coming after her and all of her friends. I really appreciated the unique design of the monster in this movie. It looked really cool and creepy, and considering this is a very low-budget movie, I was impressed by how great it looked. This film is also pretty hilarious, and I was surprised by that. I really enjoyed all the characters in this movie as well. They were really funny, likable, and charming, and this movie really does have some very heartfelt moments to it. And I know I talk about the opening credit sequence of Halloween 4 way too often on this channel, but this movie's opening credits completely copied the opening credits of Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, so naturally I loved that part. And that reminds me, this film has tons of Halloween-y vibes. Fall leaves, Halloween costumes and decorations, scary movie marathons, and of course, super creepy creatures. So if you're in the mood for a ghoulish, ghostly, indie retro throwback monster movie that you've never seen, then I recommend watching Curse of Crom, The Legend of Halloween. Terror Train. A group of college seniors fight for survival as a masked killer seeks revenge during a Halloween-themed graduation celebration aboard a party train. This movie is basically like if Scream 2 took place on a train. And of course that means everyone is a suspect. This movie is actually a remake of an old school slasher film starring Jamie Lee Curtis. But that movie is about a New Year's party, and this one is a Halloween party. And I think it makes much more sense to have a costume party on Halloween than it does to have one on New Year's. So that's already one thing that makes this better than the original. And even though this is a remake, I still think it has a very unique concept. The idea of having a whole movie take place on a train is very creative and kind of ingenious, because all of the characters are trapped in one small confined area with the killer, and there's nowhere to run or hide, and no one nearby to help. I'm pretty judgmental and picky about clowns in horror movies nowadays, because most of them seem like they're just trying to capitalize off the success of Pennywise. So I was kinda skeptical when I saw the clown on the poster. At first glance, I thought he looked a little generic. But after watching the movie, I can thankfully say I actually really liked the design of the clown in this movie. I really loved the demonic-looking eyes and the purple nose. Also, the suit he wore was pretty cool as well. And that leads me to another thing I really enjoyed about this movie. And that is the awesome concept of the killer wearing the costume of each person they kill. Every time they murder someone, they steal their costume and wear it. And then towards the end of the film, the killer puts on multiple pieces from each victim's costume. Something I did not expect from this movie was good acting. But we actually get some really great performances from our two main actresses. They did a very good job at expressing their emotions. When we see them crying or screaming, you can see the veins on their foreheads pop and their eyes start to water. And I just thought that was really impressive. Also, this movie has lots of Halloween decorations, and all of the costumes are very cool and creative. Even though this is a Tubi original, and it might look a little low budget if you only judge it by the poster, it's actually a very well-made film, with some really nice cinematography, great performances by the actors, and an awesome setting and location. Plus, some pretty ill, bloody kills. So if you're searching for a fun slasher with a murder mystery, this is one that will definitely entertain. So I highly recommend checking out Terror Train. Now before I reveal the number one movie on my list, I'm going to talk about an honorable mention. Chucky, Halloween 2. On Halloween night, Jake, Devin, and Lexi begin receiving mysterious, threatening phone calls from a familiar-sounding enemy. So I've already discussed the first and third Chucky Halloween specials, but now I'm finally talking about the second one, appropriately named after the sequel to John Carpenter's Halloween classic, Halloween 2. Chucky actually copies Ghostface in this episode, and calls Jake, Devin, and Lexi using a sinister voice, asking them strange and unsettling questions. He also copies the strangers, and keeps asking them the classic question, is Tamara home? We see a bunch of trick-or-treaters at the beginning of this episode. One of them looks just like Chucky, but then it turns out to just be a child dressed up as a clown. Everyone is wearing really cool costumes in this episode. Jake and his little brother dress up as Batman and Robin, and I'm not exactly sure what Lexi dresses up as, but I think it's supposed to be a pirate or maybe a witch. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's a cool costume nonetheless. We also get to see the characters carving pumpkins. Jake makes the coolest jack-o'-lantern ever. It's literally Chucky as a jack-o'-lantern, and it looks badass. So if you're searching for more Halloween specials to view, then I recommend watching Chucky, Halloween 2. And now, the number one movie on my list, and one of the best new Halloween horror movies of all time is Late Night with the Devil. In 1977, Jack Delroy, host of the Night Owls talk show program, faces a drop in ratings. Determined to regain his audience, he plans a Halloween special like no one has ever seen before, and invites various guest stars, including a young woman who believes she is possessed by the devil. So I had heard a lot of people talking about this movie, and I really didn't know anything about it. But a few months after it came out, I saw some screenshots of the film on Twitter, and I thought it looked really interesting and unique, so I decided to check it out. And I'm really glad I did, because this movie has a very similar premise to the WNUF Halloween special, which is one of my all-time favorite Halloween-themed horror movies. So Late Night with the Devil is basically about a late night talk show host desperate to get higher ratings and more viewers watching his television program. And so, for his Halloween special, he invites various guest stars, including a psychic, a medium, a magician, a psychologist, and a young girl who is allegedly possessed by the devil. And for a long portion of the movie, we really don't know what is real and what is just a trick or an illusion. And all of the characters themselves don't even know what is real and what isn't. The main actor in this film really plays the role of a talk show host very well. His performance seems very natural and authentic. In fact, this whole movie is extremely accurate to late night talk shows, and feels very nostalgic. And now I'm gonna discuss the horror aspects of this film. And holy fuck, this movie is genuinely scary in multiple different ways. I don't know why exactly, but at certain times throughout this movie, I started feeling very claustrophobic. And I'm not even sure why exactly. Maybe because the set of the show isn't very large, and so when bad things start happening, it feels like there's nowhere to run, but it was definitely pretty intense. This movie also reminded me of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, a few different times actually. One scene in particular had some great practical effects, and it felt very similar to the iconic scene in Halloween 3, where the kid's head starts melting while wearing the pumpkin mask, and then worms crawl out of it. And then there's also a guy in the audience dressed up as a skeleton, and his mask kept reminding me of the Silver Shamrock mask as well. But the scariest part about this movie is definitely the little girl. She was so fucking creepy and unsettling and petrifyingly haunting. She really gave me an uneasy feeling. Also, the Halloween atmosphere in this movie is incredible. All the different costumes, the decorations, the lighting, and even the commercial transition cards. It was all done very well. I'll be honest, the ending of this movie confused me a little bit, but I think I just need to watch the movie a few more times so I can fully understand everything. But overall, this movie is fantastic, and without a doubt, a new Halloween classic. So if you want a genuinely frightening, unique Halloween horror movie that will make you tremble, then I recommend watching Late Night with the Devil. Well, everybody, that's the end of my list. The final hour of the Graveyard Shift. Let me know if you check out any of these freaky flicks. And until next time, I hope you all have a great autumn, no matter the outcome. Enjoy the harvest, but beware of the darkness. And have a wickedly wonderful Halloween, filled with thrills, chills, laughter, and screams. And remember, always be prepared to get scared.